Single dad janitor discovered his CEO crying. What he revealed next was absolutely incredible. Nate rubbed the back of his neck, flexing the knots that had settled there after another grueling shift. Every swipe of his keycard echoed the divide between him and the towering corporate skyscraper he entered as a janitor in downtown Chicago. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as if mocking his routines. Every dust sweep and every mop stroke left him feeling even more invisible. But Lily, she was a constant flicker of warmth in an otherwise cold existence. His heart clenched at the thought of her, a vivid reminder of why he endured this monotonous life, and why his dreams of getting an MBA felt more distant than ever. Making his way through the lobby, he glanced at the digital clock blinking, counting the minutes until he could go home. But then, muffled sobs caught his attention. The sound tugged at something deep within him. A mix of curiosity and concern pulsed in his chest. He approached Amanda's corner office warily, the CEO of the very empire that dwarfed his existence. This was a woman who governed countless lives and held the power to shape futures, yet here she was crumpled, vulnerable, and raw. Against the polished backdrop of her high-stakes world, her tears felt monumental. He hesitated for a moment, his breath catching, wrestling with a swath of emotions. Do I turn back? Uninvited, he stepped inside, confounded by the juxtaposition of their roles. There she sat, her designer suit rumpled, appearing so much like any other human fighting her own inner battles. Are you all right? His voice, while steady, trembled with the weight of shared struggles. A moment of silence hung heavy before she spoke, revealing the intricate web of fears that came with her title: failure, expectations, and the relentless pursuit of success. In this flickering vulnerability, Nate discovered an unexpected kinship. As she unveiled her struggles, he shared glimpses of his own dreams, those elusive aspirations buried by long hours and parental obligations. Each word felt cathartic, a push against the weight of the loneliness that accompanied being the invisible janitor. They were two souls, seemingly worlds apart, yet somehow entwined by a longing for more than their circumstances allowed. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Amanda's eyes ignited with a flicker of hope as Nate's words found a place within her turbulent soul. They began to brainstorm ways to bring humanity back into the corporate culture, to remake the faceless environment into a space that appreciated those who often went unseen. Excitement lit the air. Maybe they could redefine success together. But just as the tide seemed to turn for them both, a scandal erupted within the walls of the corporation. Whispers layered the corridors with doubt, and fear tightened around Nate's throat. The once shimmering prospects of change felt compromised, with threats looming that could not only derail their budding plans but also jeopardize their very livelihoods. Nate's heart thudded. Did he risk everything? Standing by Amanda now meant marching headfirst into a storm of betrayal and uncertainty. Panic spiked through him, stirring conflict within. Did he have the courage to challenge a system that had, for so long, silenced voices like his own? He glanced at Amanda, uncertainty mirrored in her gaze, confounding him. Their internal battles intertwined, creating a suffocating tension hanging in the air, teasing the fragility of their newfound alliance. And as the ramifications of the scandal rippled through them, Nate felt the ground beneath shifting, not a place of security but a treacherous precipice. Would they truly rise together against the odds, or fall victim to the very system they desperately sought to change? And so, the quest for justice began, both heart-wrenching and exhilarating, leaving them suspended at the edge of a potent crossroads. Nate paced within the confines of the janitorial closet, the dim light flickering overhead matching the agitation that danced in his veins. Every tool around him felt mundane: mops, brooms, a bucket ready for another shift's worth of grime, each item a reminder of the life he led, the role he played as just a caretaker amid titans. But tonight, there was something bittersweet brewing, a sense of purpose clicking into place like gears turning in an intricate machinery. He couldn't shake the image of Amanda's tear-streaked face, her vulnerability echoing in his mind like a silent call to action. Those jagged edges of insecurity within corporate walls thrust him deeper into a dilemma he never anticipated. The thought of aligning himself with her now felt both thrilling and terrifying. What if they truly could break open the stifled atmosphere of the office? Resolving to face the brewing storm, Nate exited the closet with renewed determination. As he strode into the corporate chaos, whispers of uncertainty ricocheted around him, but this time they pierced his skin differently, fuel rather than fear. His very presence felt sharper, alive with the notion that perhaps he had more to contribute than he once believed. Today, he would not just clean, he would observe, charting how the dynamic shifted with every conversation he absorbed. Amanda's office became his sanctuary as he entered, his heart racing with the realization that the two of them were more than isolated figures at their respective corners of the hierarchical puzzle. She looked meticulously composed despite the crisis. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them, as if just being in the same space sparked a collaborative ignition. "I've been thinking," Nate began, his voice steady yet unfurling with the weight of aspiration. "Perhaps we leverage this scandal. Turn it to our advantage. People are hungry for change. They want to feel valued." "Exactly," Amanda replied, leaning forward, passion brightening her features. "But we must tread carefully. Many will see us as threats." A flicker of uncertainty swam in Nate's gut. He reflected on the years of feeling like a shadow. Would he have the voice to challenge the intricate web of expectations that prison success within these polished walls? What if we host a meeting? A rallying point for everyone, he proposed, his words spiraling out into the air, taking form. A dialogue about values, about humanity. Let them share their stories. It could encourage a sense of community. Nate's heart thudded as he considered the implications. He had spent his life cleaning up after others, never believing he could lead any initiative. Could a janitor actually galvanize a corporate environment? Amanda's expression softened. "You have an incredible perspective, Nate. It's something I can't do alone." Encouraged, he sensed that with every ounce of courage he gathered, the obstacles seemed less daunting. They began detailing their plan, words flowing back and forth, formulating fresh strategies and pushing past the barriers that had kept them both shackled. However, doubt slithered in. Would their initiatives be received with open arms or met with resistance? More than just the professional stakes were involved, something deeper beckoned. Faced with the prospect of rising together, Nate wrestled with an inner conflict pushing him to confront not only the corporate landscape but his own identity within it. A sharp knock broke the momentum, and his stomach dropped at the sight of Chad, the vice president known for his cold judgment and cast-iron grip on hierarchy. "What is going on in here?" Chad's mischievous smirk sent a chill down Nate's spine. Nate exchanged a swift glance with Amanda, their thoughts colliding in quiet understanding. The time had come to face the unyielding tide head-on. What would Chad's inquiry unravel? They were on the brink of something monumental, yet also teetering on the edge of catastrophe. Would they rise, or would the storm sweep them away? The door swung open with a creak, and Chad stepped into the small office as if he owned the space. His imposing figure loomed over Nate and Amanda, the air thick with tension. Chad's eyes narrowed, assessing the scene with the trademark skepticism of someone who thrived on control. "What is going on in here?" he repeated, each word a calculated move in a power play Nate had long since learned to recognize. Nate felt his throat tighten. The words he had practiced in the mirror now evaporated, replaced with the cold reality of the moment. He knew this was not just a conversation but a point of no return. Amanda's gaze, however, fueled a flicker of palpable urgency within him. "We were discussing ideas for the upcoming meeting," he stumbled, but Amanda cut in smoothly. "About enhancing team collaboration in light of the recent events. Sharing our experiences to foster an open environment," she added, her confidence contrasting against Nate's wavering certainty. Chad scoffed, folding his arms like a barricade, yet his reaction was curious, not outright dismissive. Collaborative environments don't just sprout overnight, Amanda. It requires strategic thinking, a structure that's lacking here, he said, gesturing dismissively with a wave of his hand. Nate seized the moment, spurred by Amanda's composed demeanor. But sometimes structure inhibits creativity. People need to feel human again, to share what they're experiencing without fear of repercussions. The words spilled out of him, raw and unmediated, challenging the very norms Chad represented. Chad straightened, caught off guard by Nate's boldness. It was a surge Nate had never felt, a shift from the role of the invisible worker to an engaged voice in the room. Relief mixed with residual anxiety as he sensed the gravity of his challenge. And who are you to dictate what people need? Chad's voice chilled the air. Nate's heartbeat rushed. He felt the weight of years playing it small, years of compliance echoing in his mind. But something snapped. He had spent his life accepting orders, cleaning up after others, watching from the sidelines. I'm just someone who sees the humans behind their titles, Chad. Is that so wrong? Chad's face darkened, but Amanda leaned forward, her enthusiasm eclipsing the tension. Change isn't easy, but it starts with recognizing the struggles of our team members. Nate has insights that Chad interrupted, that's a lovely sentiment, but this is still a business. We need to remain focused on profitability and performance metrics. Nate took a breath, laying it all on the line. But at what cost, Chad? High turnover. Low morale. Productivity isn't just numbers, it's people willing to invest themselves in their work. This is an opportunity to listen. For a split second, Chad paused, perhaps contemplating the ramifications of what Nate had introduced. There was a fleeting spark of doubt in his eyes. Could Nate's words resonate in a room built on meticulous control? A quick glance at Amanda showed she was wrapped in both apprehension and fervent hope. We're all in this together, and if we don't acknowledge the human side, we'll lose more than just productivity, Nate continued, steadier now, the rush of adrenaline lending him clarity. Chad's smirk faltered, revealing fractures in his facade of authority, but he quickly regained his composure, determined not to bend. I'll give you both a chance, but tread carefully, he warned, his dismissal cloaked beneath a velvet glove. As Chad retreated, Nate felt the heady mix of victory and fear. This moment could be the catalyst for change, or it might unravel their plans completely. Could he truly lead an initiative that disrupted the oppressive structure of the corporation? Amanda's eyes sparkled with a blend of admiration and relief. You did it, Nate. You stood up to him, she said, an undertone of excitement fueling her voice. But as the thrill of success washed over him, a deeper concern gripped Nate's mind. Would the storm brewing within the company swallow them whole? The stakes felt higher now, and his journey had taken an unexpected turn toward the unknown. With the weight of this new reality settling on him, Nate wondered how far he was willing to stretch beyond the confines of his janitorial duties. What began as concern for Amanda's well-being had spiraled into a potential transformation of not only a workplace but also of himself. As new ideas simmered and hope flickered in the air, Nate could only brace for what came next because the real confrontation had only just begun. Would they successfully navigate the corporate storm, or would their efforts be drowned out before they even had a chance to take flight? The afternoon was quieter after Chad's departure, but the buzz of tension lingered, curling around Nate like a fog. He almost felt a physical pull toward the window, where sunlight spilled into the office, illuminating scattered proposal papers on the table. It took no more than glancing at Amanda, whose expression oscillated between pride and trepidation, for Nate to realize the burden of what they had just undertaken. Are you okay? Amanda asked, her voice soft but probing. Nate shifted his weight, feeling the familiar pressure of doubt. I think I am. But I also feel like we just stirred a wasp nest. She chuckled lightly, but he could see the seriousness behind her smile. That might be an understatement. But you were incredibly brave, Nate. You pushed back. Do you know how hard that is? I guess so, he replied, but the weight of their challenge was starting to settle on him. I just don't want us to get crushed beneath it. Chad isn't just any manager, he's ruthless. Despite his words, a flicker of adrenaline from his confrontation danced along his spine, igniting a thought. Am I starting to thrive in this chaos? Taking a seat, Nate pulled the rest of the proposal papers toward him, sensing a swell of possibilities. If they were going to dismantle an ingrained structure, it would take more than abstract calls for change, they needed a plan, something concrete to guide their ambitions. I want to gather insights from the team, he declared, a clearer vision materializing. Let us create an anonymous survey or something. Ask them what they really want and need from this place. The thought churned in his mind, the notion of hearing the voices of others igniting a rush of purpose. Amanda's eyes widened. That's brilliant. If we have real data to present, it might just tip the scales. It's not just about filling seats, it's about making those seats valuable. A smile grew as excitement built within her. Nate sensed that they were on the precipice of something monumental. But we need to ensure confidentiality. Chad won't stand for this, especially if he feels threatened. Then we have to be cautious. Perhaps we can run it through a third party. Tell our colleagues we want to create an open culture but do it discreetly, she suggested. The partnership, unspoken yet incredibly potent, rippled between them, an emergent synergy blooming amidst the dust of change. Nate felt invigorated, but lingering doubts threaded through his thoughts. What if this initiative backfired? What if Chad responded with backlash instead of acceptance? It was a risk, one that could threaten both their careers and the team's morale, a constant push-pull between driving change and protecting their positions. What if Chad finds out? He murmured, skepticism edging into his voice. Amanda's expression shifted towards determination, her eyes flashing with a sense of purpose. If he finds out, then we'll figure out how to handle that too. We're not powerless as long as we keep moving forward. You ignited that spark today, Nate. Let us build on it. Her conviction empowered him, and Nate felt an unfamiliar heat coursing through him. Perhaps he was more than just a janitor, hiding in the background. Perhaps he could wield undiscovered talents, adaptability, empathy, vision honed over years of observing, of understanding the unvoiced challenges of others. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, plummeting the room into shadows, a new resolve solidified within him. They would gather those insights, forge those connections, challenge Chad's reign. But the road ahead looked twisted and filled with uncertain confrontations. Could he truly lead his team against the oppressive wind? A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was too early for the meeting to commence, and the sound carried an unfamiliar weight that sent a jolt through him. He peered into the hallway, and the sight before him almost made him step back in disbelief. There, framed by the door, stood Chad, his expression unreadable. Behind his stern facade, something flickered of vulnerability that both terrified and intrigued Nate. The moment felt poised on a knife's edge, the potential for collision hanging heavily in the air. What did Chad want? Did he come to annihilate their plans or offer an unexpected olive branch? Nate swallowed hard, knowing without a doubt that this conversation would determine everything. The battle between maintaining the status quo and igniting real change awaited beyond the threshold, and he felt the echo of anticipation ripple through him. As he prepared to step into the fray once again, he realized that he was no longer just Nate, the janitor. He had become a player in this high-stakes game. In this corporate arena, every strategy counted, and he was ready to fight for a future that had so long been denied. Chad stepped inside, the door closing with a decisive click that echoed through the room. The quiet weight of uncertainty settled between them like a taut string, ready to snap with either of their next words. Nathan instinctively straightened, pulling back the layers of hesitation that threatened to cloud his reasoning. "What brings you here, Chad?" he inquired, his voice steady, yet revealing a hint of the anxiety that churned within. Chad's brow furrowed momentarily as he crossed the space to Amanda's desk. "I wanted to check on you two after our earlier meeting," he replied, the edge in his tone tempered by something softer, perhaps an unexpected vulnerability. Nate couldn't shake the feeling that Chad was not just here for a perfunctory visit. "What did you think of the proposal?" Amanda interjected, her curiosity clearly piqued. Chad paused, his expression shifting slightly as he toyed with a pen, avoiding direct eye contact. "Honestly, it was a wake-up call. I know things have not been ideal, but I didn't see the depth of the issue until you brought it up. It sparked something in me." Nate's heart raced. Was this a rare moment of honesty? Chad had always been the unwavering iron fist of the office, but now he seemed like a man wrestling with uncertainty, a fragile veneer peeling back to reveal something raw underneath. "What do you mean?" Nate pressed, trying to anchor the conversation. His mind reeled with possibilities. This could be the breakthrough that catapulted their efforts forward, or another elaborate trap. Chad's shoulders slumped, and he finally met Nate's gaze. "I've lost sight of the people in this company. It's been all about numbers, profits, and KPIs for too long. I didn't realize how much we've alienated the team. I'd like to change that." Nate exchanged a glance with Amanda, both of them caught in the tension of this unfolding revelation. The line between ally and enemy blurred, but Nate had to tread carefully. "Are you saying you want to work with us?" Nate ventured, frustration and hope mingling in his voice. Could a man like Chad actually pivot towards collaboration rather than confrontation? There was a long pause, and the silence stretched thin. "I think we need to acknowledge the morale issues. If I want to keep this department afloat, we have to listen to the voices that matter." Nate felt a surge of disbelief. This wasn't the Chad he knew. Was there an underlying motive, or was a genuine transformation brewing beneath the surface? He couldn't dismiss the fact that a partnership was possible, but accepting it came with risks. "What if we gather feedback directly from the team, and we can show it to you? Show you what they really need?" Amanda suggested cautiously. Chad appeared to mull it over, his eyes darting between them as if reading the route of their ambush. "If you believe it can help, then sure. Let us see the data before deciding on a course." There it was again, that unsteady ground upon which they stood. Chad's readiness to welcome change felt transparent yet hopeful, lifting the weight pressing down on Nate's shoulders. But Nate wrestled with his gut instinct. What if this was merely a diversion? An attempt to regain control by shepherding their exploratory efforts? "Okay," Nate stated, determination solidifying in his gut. "We'll gather the feedback, but there needs to be assurance that discussions won't be manipulated." He couldn't help but challenge Chad, pushing boundaries as he focused on clarity and purpose. Chad's demeanor shifted, a flicker of tension sparking in his shoulders. "I can't control how you choose to interpret this. I'm just being honest about my past mistakes." In that moment, Nate's view of his manager began to shift. This was the first glimpse of vulnerability he had ever witnessed from Chad. Was this a prelude to growth? Amanda stood silently beside him, her expression mirroring his mix of hope and wariness. Nate could feel that deep-seated urge to protect the momentum they had built, but also wondered if this was the pathway to actual change within their workplace. "Okay, so let us move forward together," Chad finally said, his tone hardening as he straightened to his full height. "But know that I won't tolerate any undermining of authority. I will support changes as long as you abide by my rules." The stakes were now palpable, as Nate's resolve hardened. Could he navigate this delicate dance with a man who had previously threatened their efforts? How far could he push this newfound dynamic before it turned treacherous? In that swirling mix of anticipation and dread, Nate recognized the looming conflict. This was just the beginning of a risk-laden partnership. The game had changed, and now, the true test of his potential awaited, yet Chad's guarded stance hinted at deeper challenges ahead. As their eyes locked in that charged moment, Nate realized that he was ascending from just a player to a contender. He had to grow not only for himself but for the team that awaited change. What lay ahead on this unpredictable path toward reformation was still unknown, but Nate knew one thing: he had to be prepared for the emotional reckoning that would come next, especially if he intended to defy Chad's unpredictable nature. Ultimately, the question loomed large: how could he navigate the treacherous waters ahead without being drowned by his own ideals? Nate sat at his desk, the hum of the office around him fading into a distant murmur as he processed Chad's unexpected shift. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on him. This was a rare opportunity, a crack in Chad's hardened exterior. But could he trust it? Nate felt the thrill of potential coursing through him, yet uncertainty dripped like poison in his veins. He glanced at Amanda, who was staring into space, lost in thought. Her brows were knitted in contemplation, reflecting the mix of excitement and hesitation that had settled over them like a thick fog. They were on the precipice of change, but the depths of Chad's inner workings remained a mystery. The balance of authority felt precarious, yet it held promise for their ambitions. "Let us outline our approach," Nate suggested, pulling out a notepad. The act of planning served as a beacon, casting away the shadows of doubt momentarily. He needed to channel the energy buzzing through his veins into a strategic campaign for change. Amanda nodded, her eyes flickering back to him. "We need to establish trust with the team first. If we gather feedback, it needs to feel safe for them to express their true sentiments." Nate scribbled down ideas, his mind racing. How could he encourage openness while walking the tightrope of Chad's authority? What if we frame this as an anonymous survey? We can present it as a way for everyone to voice their thoughts about the workplace. Absolutely. We'll create a comfortable space for honesty, Amanda agreed, leaning closer to the desk, now fully engaged. The partnership they were fostering was as vulnerable as Chad's newfound honesty, fragile yet bursting with possibilities. As they worked through various survey questions, Nate's thoughts often wandered back to Chad. Despite the looming uncertainties, a part of him was intrigued by this possibility for leadership transformation. What had prompted this realization for Chad? Nate noted the twinge of curiosity battling against his ingrained skepticism. When they wrapped up their brainstorming, Nate felt a rush of adrenaline and purpose. They had created a concrete plan, a checklist for momentum to gather a pulse of the office. The next day would be their turning point, a chance to place the power of feedback in the employees' hands. "Hey, want to grab lunch and finalize our pitch for Chad afterward?" Amanda asked, breaking into his thoughts. "Sure," Nate replied, forcing himself to smile, though a tight knot formed in his stomach. As they walked out, he caught sight of Chad through the glass partition. The sight of him poring over numbers didn't evoke the fear it once had. Instead, it stirred thoughts of strategic manipulation and the blurred lines of authority. Lunch with Amanda was productive, concluding with a mutual sense of hope. They shared ideas about framing the proposal to ensure that Chad would see the validity in their approach. The synergy between them felt electric, both pushing each other to challenge the status quo. Returning to the office, Nate couldn't shake the growing realization that his own leadership skills were burgeoning. He felt more than just a cog in the corporate wheel. Perhaps he had potential for growth that had lain dormant beneath the weight of those oppressive company norms. But as they entered the conference room to present their survey plan to Chad, a gnawing fear gripped him. What if he miscalibrated his understanding of Chad's transformation? Nate steeled himself. If he wished to navigate this complex landscape of authority and ambition, he had to commit to honesty, both with himself and with the team. They needed to forge ahead, and in doing so, Nate realized this was less about challenging Chad and more about testing his own resilience. As they delivered their pitch, Chad listened intently, nodding as they presented their vision. Nate could see that behind Chad's poker face, he was weighing their plan. It felt as if their voices harmonized with a greater purpose. But then, Chad interjected with a sharpness that cut through the air. "And how do I know this one undermine the authority I have?" The question hung ominously, a reminder of the delicate balance they were attempting to navigate. Nate's pulse quickened. This wasn't a mere formality. The stakes were real. But with his new sense of purpose, he was determined to respond. "Because it's about listening to everyone, including you, Chad. Your leadership can guide us through this, but we need to acknowledge the team's needs together." Chad raised an eyebrow, silent contemplation flickering across his features. It was a challenge, a tentative acceptance, and Nate felt the ground beneath him both unsettling and exhilarating. Would this pivotal moment dissolve into conflict or forge a pathway to collaboration? Nate realized that he stood at the crossroads, poised on the edge of transformation, not just for the team but also within himself. He understood that reconciling authority and collaboration would be his greatest test yet, a reflection of his own growth, and the resulting evolution could cascade through the workplace. As surprising thoughts surged through him, one rang clear: this was not merely a professional reform, it was a personal reckoning. What lay beneath the surface was yet to be discovered, both in Chad and in his own fractured sense of self. He braced for the impact of Chad's response. Would his ambition to foster change be met with resistance, or would he find an ally in the most unexpected of places? Nate felt the weight of silence in the conference room stretch into an eternity, the unanticipated tension radiating from Chad's questioning gaze. The atmosphere crackled with potential. Was it the tension of confrontation or the stirring promise of collaboration? The internal conflict within Nate intensified. He could sense the boundaries of his own aspirations shifting. Chad's features remained inscrutable as he processed Nate's response. Every second hung heavy with implications. Nate swallowed hard, deliberately centering his thoughts. It was time to confront the subtlety of authority and the inherent fragility within leadership. He had already made a choice, now he had to own it. Look, Chad, Nate began with measured carefully, leadership is not about unilateral authority, it's about cultivating an environment where the entire team can flourish, voicing their ideas and concerns openly. If we are to transform this workplace, we have to invite collaboration, not just from the top down, but across the board. He may have been pushing boundaries, but a nagging voice inside insisted that this was not merely about winning over Chad. It was about nurturing a culture of mutual accountability and support that Nate yearned for. Chad's eyes flickered with a hint of intrigue, a fascinating vulnerability peeking through the armor of his authority. What if they voice concerns that contradict my vision? He replied, an undertone of genuine curiosity layered with apprehension. Then we adapt, Nate answered, his resolve solidifying. Change isn't about being right, it's about being willing to evolve. Your leadership would shine if you integrated those voices into your strategy. It would galvanize the team. Chad leaned back, his fingers steepled against his chin as he mulled over Nate's words. The ball was in his court, and Nate felt a rush of adrenaline, the scales of leadership tilting ever so slightly toward the collaborative side. An imperceptible shift in the air had Nate reconsidering his own fears, and he sensed Amanda's anticipation beside him. This was not only Chad's test but also his own. Should he make a bolder move? The implicit agreement between Chad and Nate still hung in the balance, but Nate was beginning to see dimly through the mist. The chance lay not just in convincing Chad, but in crystallizing his own convictions in the process. If you're concerned about your position, Nate continued, leaning slightly forward, that will be addressed by how you respond to this initiative. You can either engage with the team, or allow fear to dictate your approach. What matters more, being unchallenged or being respected for fostering a thriving workplace? The unaccustomed assertiveness startled Nate. He was wrestling not only with Chad's potential reaction but also with his own burgeoning confidence. Every word carried the weight of leadership intertwined with his emerging sense of self-worth. In that moment, Chad's facade cracked further. It was a fleeting glimpse, but Nate caught the flicker of confusion reflected in his eyes. It wasn't hostility or defensive posturing, it was uncertainty. In Nate's heart, something shifted, the realization that they were both navigating unfamiliar territory, that perhaps, Chad sought reassurance as much as he did. I see your point, Chad finally said, his voice low. But it might not be that simple. We'll need to tread carefully if we go down this road. The ambiguity in his response remained, but the hint of openness was undeniable. Nate felt a swell of relief mixing with excitement. This was a breakthrough not just for Chad, but for himself. With so much left unsaid, Nate now had a renewed sense of purpose. As they left the conference room, he could hardly contain the sense of liberation sweeping through him. The true challenge had begun not just in altering workplace dynamics but in understanding his role in it. Later that evening, as Nate sat at home, the weight of his day enveloped him. Quietly reflecting on the exchange, he found his thoughts drifting back to Amanda. They had discernibly propelled each other forward, yet he questioned whether she recognized the depth of his transformation. Was he ready to share his evolving vision for the workplace with her? The glow of his phone pulled him from his thoughts. A notification pinged a message from Chad. "Let's discuss the survey tomorrow. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Nate, beyond the points we discussed today." A mixture of anticipation and unease coursed through him. What did Chad genuinely want? And how could he ensure that their visions aligned? The urgency of the moment crashed over him. Tomorrow's meeting had shifted in complexity, and Nate realized that the call for change was also a call to articulate his own journey. The next step loomed larger than he anticipated, filled with the prospect of confrontation and growth intertwined. He leaned back in his chair, uncertainty lingering like an uninvited guest, while the weight of possibility settled in. The stage was set for a dialogue that would explore not just Chad's role as a leader, but the uncharted territories of Nate's own aspirations. What awaited him when he stepped into that office tomorrow could either reinforce his new foundation or challenge him to dig deeper into the well of his own convictions. The discomfort of growth beckoned, and Nate was torn between apprehension and the thrill of forging ahead. The stakes had been raised, and with it, his resolve. What would this new dialogue reveal about himself? As dawn broke the next day, the air felt charged with possibilities. Nate stood in front of the bathroom mirror, his reflection staring back with an intensity he hitherto hadn't recognized. His mind raced with the weight of what lay ahead, thoughts spiraling between excitement and anxiety. Dressed sharply, he adjusted his tie, a ritual that felt oddly empowering today. With each step toward the office, Nate rehearsed his thoughts, desperate to frame his points with clarity. He wanted to not just contribute to the meeting but to actively shape the conversation. There was a delicate balance to maintain. He needed to uphold his newfound assertiveness while respecting Chad's authority. They were no longer opposing forces, rather, they were two men exploring the contours of leadership together. Walking into the office, Nate was greeted by the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee. Recognizing Amanda seated at her desk, he felt a pang of guilt wash over him. Had he shared enough of his transformation with her? Her role as a confidant and supportive ally weighed heavily on his conscience. "Hey, you okay?" Amanda asked, her tone sincere. "Yeah, just gearing up for the meeting with Chad. I want to ensure we're on the same page about the survey findings." His voice carried an edge of anticipation, but he noticed unease linger in her eyes. "Just remember, it's a partnership. Don't go in there thinking you have to lead every charge alone," she replied, tilting her head and reinforcing a tone of unspoken encouragement. Nate nodded, feeling gratitude toward her. They had shared many moments of support, and he realized the need to vocalize his plans, his vision for not just his own path forward but theirs together. "I appreciate you reminding me. I think this one will be different," he responded, the message echoing a more profound resolve. As the clock ticked closer to the hour, Nate's heart rate quickened. There was a proliferation of thoughts swirling, a chorus of potential outcomes ranging from harmony to conflict. Was Chad truly ready to listen? Would the dialogue transform beyond mere words into constructive action? When Chad walked into the room, Nate instinctively straightened his posture. The man exuded authority but was softened today, tempered by a vulnerability Nate had glimpsed before. "Thanks for coming in early, Nate. Let's delve into the survey findings." The way Chad framed the session felt different. He didn't plunge in with preconceived notions but instead offered Nate a chance to fill the silence. Nate could practically hear the hum of their collective anticipations within the walls of the conference room. "Thanks, Chad. I think the results show a clear desire for collaboration across teams. Employees want to feel heard rather than just fed directives." Nate leaned forward, the room electrifying with the weight of his words, and it felt right for the first time. As he continued to express insights from the data, Nate noticed Chad leaning in. The tension wasn't gone, but it had morphed into something palpable. They were both confronting their limitations, Chad's distrust of sharing power, Nate's uncertainty about articulating his ideas. Each was navigating a new territory of understanding, threading through the complexities of leadership and collaboration. But as discussions deepened, Nate confronted an unexpected wall when Chad launched into a specific counterargument about employee incentives, stubbornly reluctant to change his viewpoint. The vehemence stung, triggering Nate's instincts to retreat back into less assertive habits. "What I heard from the team was that they feel undervalued, not just in how they're compensated, but also in their contributions to the workplace," Nate pressed, challenging his own urge to avoid conflict. "We can't keep adhering to methods that don't resonate with them. Each voice in this organization deserves recognition." Chad's eyes darkened, but a flicker of acknowledgement crossed his face. It was a pivotal moment. Nate felt the embers of confrontation evolve into a spark of resolution. The dialogue danced volatile between their perspectives, each continued challenge a chance to amplify understanding or significantly escalate tension. They were on the precipice of either collaboration or division. But just as Nate thought he saw a breakthrough, Chad's demeanor shifted yet again. His shoulders slumped, an unexpected vulnerability breaking through. "I didn't realize how hard it was for my own team to feel unappreciated. I thought I was managing expectations, not limiting voices," he confessed, words laced with a mixture of shame and relief. In that moment, the air seemed to still. They stood at a crossroads, but the next turn held a promise Nate hadn't anticipated, challenging not just Chad's authority, but also the thin veneer of confidence that Nate had maintained even in moments of sincerity. Would he push for an answer that further examined both their shortcomings, or would he soften the edges as an act of immediate alliance? The clock ticked ominously, and Nate realized the crux of their evolving relationship hinged not solely on the conversations about improvements but also on challenging the unspoken fears each man held: the fear of vulnerability, the fear of failure. Nate's next words would be crucial, the moment a defining fork in their professional development. Could he articulate a shared vision powerful enough to resonate with both their aspirations, or would past hesitations pull him back? He took a breath, steeling himself. "Chad, to move forward, we have to dismantle the fear that limits us both. What if we reshape our leadership styles to foster that kind of environment? What if we provide a forum where our teams can truly innovate?" As Nate leaned into the potential of this intimacy, the room crackled anew with tension, holding the possibility of deep change not just for their organization but for each of them personally. The stakes were raised yet again, the future tangled once more in complexity. What would come of this newfound tension, and could they harness it into not just a functional dialogue, but a deeper partnership? Nate held his breath, the atmosphere thick with apprehension. The weight of his words lingered in the air, a dare and an invitation all at once. Chad stared at him, the silence amplifying the mounting uncertainty, as if their fates hinged solely on the next moment. "Why should we change?" Chad's question cut through the stillness, a mixture of challenge and curiosity evident in his tone. "What makes you think it won't lead to chaos?" Nate's heart raced at the implication. This was not just an inquiry, it was a lifeline. He sensed the opportunity to reshape not only Chad's viewpoint, but also to redefine his own boundaries. "Because chaos is already here, Chad. Ignoring the voices of our team isn't leading, it's merely managing a facade. They won't innovate under a cloud of silence." His voice steadied, the steel tipping into his spine. "Change might feel chaotic, but it's a necessary rupture to build something more robust." Chad shifted in his seat, a furrow deepening between his brows. Nate noticed the subtle traces of sweat forming on Chad's temples, a physical manifestation of the tension building around them. This wasn't just about the organization anymore, it was personal, a reflection of who they both aspired to be. "I understand why it's hard to trust. It feels safer to hold tight to what we know," Nate continued, pushing through the discomfort. "But safety can be an illusion." The words tumbled out, fueled by a blend of determination and fear. "We can't grow if we're afraid of failing." As he spoke, Nate felt a shift within himself, as if each assertion was breaking a layer of doubt that had plagued him throughout his career. This wasn't just about working with Chad, it was about challenging his own instincts to hide behind authority and allowing space for authenticity. Finally, Chad exhaled deeply, the tension in his shoulders easing ever so slightly. "I'm willing to consider this," he said, voice low but firm. "But we might face backlash. Employees could resist or feel overwhelmed. Then we meet it head-on." Nate felt the heat surge in his chest. "We communicate openly about the transition, embracing their fears alongside ours. It's about creating a culture of resilience. They may resist at first, but they'll appreciate being part of the solution." The intensity shifted again as Chad nodded. There was vulnerability in Chad's stance now, and Nate recognized the significance. They weren't just two men in the tower negotiating leadership, they were unveiling their hidden insecurities, revealing what each held back for the sake of roles. Nate realized true leadership wasn't just about authority, it was about fostering collaboration as equals in the face of fear and discomfort. "Okay," Chad murmured, "let us present the findings to the team together." The words were tinged with resolve, but Nate felt the underlying current of uncertainty that still occupied Chad's mind. Together, Nate repeated, the warmth of that simple agreement igniting a spark of brotherhood. They had traversed a significant distance in a matter of minutes, yet Nate understood that the journey was just beginning. In the weeks ahead, they would not only present their strategy but live it. Nate had to confront his personal hurdles and embrace a leadership that was as much about personal growth as it was about professional integrity. He had to lead not only with ideas but with vulnerability, the courage to repeatedly open discussions about expectations and disappointments. As Chad and Nate rose from the table, the meeting felt like a turning point rather than an end. They prepared for the conversations that lay ahead, aware of the potential for conflict yet unified in purpose. But with every step they took, Nate could sense lurking shadows behind their newfound partnership. Would the team embrace their change? Could he maintain this momentum when challenged by others reluctant to shift from the status quo? With the presentation looming, the pressure to deliver weighed heavily on him. The time had come to face both their colleagues and their own preparation for growth. In the quiet before the storm, uncertainty whispered incessantly in Nate's ear. Would they truly be able to navigate through the turbulence that change often brought? As Nate stepped toward the team meeting, the echo of his heartbeat reverberated in his chest, reminding him that true leadership was not just about the decisions made but about facing fear, honoring vulnerability, and daring to embrace authenticity in every stroke of leadership. What awaited them on the other side of this pivotal presentation could either forge them into stronger leaders or expose their deepest fears yet again. Nate stood in the conference room, his heart racing in tandem with the murmurs and shifting chairs of his colleagues surrounding him. A sea of faces, some familiar, others indifferent, looked back at him, eyes reflecting curiosity, skepticism, or perhaps both. The moment felt significant, an intersection between the past and a future filled with potential. With Amanda by his side, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had crafted a vision for change that could transform the workplace, but now it was time to put that vision in the hands of the very people who would influence its outcome. "Thank you all for being here today," Nate began, tapping into the exhilaration coursing through him. "We want to foster an honest dialogue about our workplace, addressing some core issues and gathering your invaluable insights." As he spoke, the gravity of their ambitious plan loomed over him. The anonymous survey had revealed deep-seated feelings of underappreciation and isolation among employees. It was a perspective rarely voiced, yet vital, and now it was Nate's responsibility to convey that urgency to his colleagues and to Chad, who sat attentively across the table. "We're not just looking for feedback," he continued, glancing around to maintain engagement. "We hope to cultivate a collaborative atmosphere where every voice has merit. The goal is to ensure no one feels like just a number, but rather an integral part of this organization." When he finished his opening, Amanda took the cue, cascading into their meticulously crafted presentation. She shared the survey results and the narratives of their coworkers, the hidden struggles, the unsolicited ideas, the yearning for recognition. Nate felt the atmosphere shift as they shared the truths gathered from those who felt voiceless. The room responded with murmurs of acknowledgement, small nods were exchanged. Yet, Nate knew they were navigating uncharted waters. He anticipated pushback from those resistant to the shift, especially from Chad. But as he exchanged glances with his manager, it wasn't fear he encountered, it was determination. "Team," Chad interjected, his authoritative tone juxtaposed with a newfound willingness. "What you're saying strikes a chord. I recognize that our previous approach may have stifled the very innovation we strive for." There was a palpable tension. Chad acknowledged vulnerability, but Nate couldn't yet interpret the sincerity behind it. Encouraged, Nate seized the moment. "That's why it's crucial for us to move forward together. Leadership isn't just top-down, it thrives in an ecosystem of mutual respect and understanding." As the discussion unfolded, Nate mirrored the effectiveness of their collaborative efforts. Questions arose, thoughts exchanged, and ideas developed organically from the group. The previously stoic atmosphere gradually transformed, revealing people who were eager to share their thoughts yet constrained by years of corporate routine. Each voice that contributed added layers of complexity to Nate's understanding. There were champions for change, allies and detractors, all aware that the climate was shifting. But even in that uncertainty, Nate noticed something profound: their collective spirit ignited, sparking curiosity instead of fear. As the conversation circled back, Chad's contribution took on a personal touch that surprised Nate. "I realize now how vital it is that we not only hear these concerns but act on them," he said, his gaze steady and resolute. "I'm willing to adapt my approach, and I ask for your support as we shift towards this new framework together." Nate felt a rush of exhilaration wash over him. This was a different Chad, one unearthing the complexities of leadership. It was then that Nate fully recognized the significance of his own transformation throughout this journey. He had shed the mantle of merely existing as a janitor who swept floors and emerged as a voice that demanded to be heard, not just within the confines of cleanliness but in the heart of corporate innovation. By the end of the meeting, a palpable energy surged through the room, a sense of unity that echoed their shared journey. As people filtered out, conversations erupted, new collaborations sparked, and genuine excitement took root among the team members who felt they finally had a hand in shaping their environment. Later, as Nate gathered his things, Amanda approached him, her face beaming with admiration. "You did it, Nate. The pushback was minimal, and most importantly, we are moving in the right direction." Nate nodded, a smile creeping onto his face. "I didn't do it alone. This was a team effort. We're on the edge of something substantial, and I couldn't have imagined it without you." The sincerity of their alliance resonated in the air between them, their partnership blossoming amidst personal growth. As Nate left the office, a feeling of lightness enveloped him. He hadn't merely paved the way for dialogue change, he had carved out a space for personal achievement and professional recognition. The path he had traversed from janitor to a pivotal voice was not merely victorious, it was transformative. In that exhilarating moment, Nate knew he had the competence to enact change while grounding himself in authenticity. He glanced towards the sky, breathing in the freedom that accompanied his new identity. This renewal would resonate not only in the success of their initiatives but within his own aspirations for growth. He had conquered fear, he had attained a solid confidence, a commitment to fostering a culture that truly functioned on the tenets of respect, innovation, and collaboration. Now, as Nate stepped into his role as a catalyst for change, he understood that this was only the beginning. He felt more than prepared for any future challenge, ready to venture forth into uncharted territories. This was his moment, his journey defined, his future clear. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss more exclusive stories of personal and professional triumph. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more audiences who need uplifting narratives about transformation. Comment below with your reactions and predictions about Nate's journey moving forward. Your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second, support the channel and join our community of true fans who understand the gravity of personal overcoming stories.